स्टार्ट करूं? मैम को बोल दीजिए। Graceful and warm greetings to everyone and salutation at the feet of God. Respected Principal Sir, the dignitaries, all faculty members, researchers, all the participants from across the country, I cordially welcome all of you on behalf of the whole gamut of Government Narmada College, Hoshangabad. On the second day of the one-week online faculty development program, which is organized by IQAC Cell in collaboration with World Bank project on the topic soft skills and personality development. Our program had started on 20th of this month with two brilliant, mind-blowing presentations by two renowned professors, respected Dr. Anuj Punde from IIT Bhopal, who had spoken on presentation skills used in the effective teaching, and respected Dr. Swati Chandorkar, Principal, Government SSNM Mahila Mahavidyalaya, Narsinghpur, who had spoken on leadership skills. After that, this program was postponed for 1 week due to the sudden demise of Honorable Governor of MP, Shri Lalji Tandon, and in the wake of 5 days state mourning, we pray to God for the peace of the departed soul. Before I resume, I would like to introduce you with the respected guests who are going to speak today. Today, we have with us most dynamic, energetic, jest-infusing, and renowned personalities in their fields, respected Dr. Debarshi Mukherjee, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Business Management, Tripura University, who will speak on the topic attitude and motivation, and Ms. Chitrakshi Viz, Image Consultant, Communication and Behavioral Trainer, New Delhi. She'll be speaking on conflict resolution. I heartily welcome all the esteemed guests and offer the bouquet of our warm feelings. We are feeling too much privileged to have you with us, our respected guests. The moderator of today's program is Dr. Rashmi Tiwari ma'am, coordinator of the program and head of Computer Science Department, Government Narmada College, Hoshangabad. Now I request respected ma'am to take over the charge for the plenary session. Over to Rashmi Tiwari ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. A very warm welcome to all the honorable dignitaries, resource persons, and participants to the second day of National Faculty Development Program organized by IQAC in collaboration with World Bank Project, Government Narmada College, Hoshangabad. Hoping that today's session proves to be of great value to everyone who's being a part of. Let's begin the session by inviting Dr. Devarshi Mukherjee, Associate Professor and Head Department of Business Management, Tripura University. His research interest lies in developing blended learning models and ICT intervention in tertiary educations. He has worked extensively in curricula design and innovative andragogy development besides teaching and academic administrations over the last 2 decades. He holds his name for publication of around 70 research papers and various books, concept papers, conference proceeding, etc. 2 research scholars have been awarded PhD under Dr. Mukherjee. He has delivered 40 invited talks and chaired technical sessions at many conclaves held at places like IIT Bhubaneswar, MSME Institute Agartala, Flame University Pune, etc. He has organized many national and international conferences, faculty development programs. Dr. Mukherjee conducted leadership and motivation sessions with the management, students, and teachers at various institutions, including MHRD sponsored faculty development program and refresher courses. He is the state coordinator of AICTE SAPE Tripura. Sir, I request you to convey your thoughts on attitude and motivation.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just let me share the screen first. Yeah. So is the screen visible to all?
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I first congratulate the government, Narmada College, for organizing this wonderful thought-provoking FDP for the faculty members and scholars all across the country. And a special thanks goes to Dr. Mamta Garg and Dr. Rashmi Tiwari for allowing me to share my thoughts here. And obviously the principal of this college, Dr. Wen Chobe, and all the hardworking people who has made this wonderful FDP possible. So in fact, that brings the entire topic into the life, because that's actually shows the attitude and the motivation that drives the faculty members of this college to bring such an astounding performance of bringing the entire academic fraternity across the nation to come to a common platform and share their thoughts. So today I'll be talking to one of the most important, much spoken about topic, but yet somewhere we had missed the plot that I believe in certain sections. So I'll try to cover certain aspects, primarily to the students, the industry, and the teachers, and then we try to see to it how could we develop our attitude, and we can talk about this motivation. So I'll try to restrict to the very less theoretical component and try to add some my own thoughts into it. So I have named this talk as attitude and motivation, and three important figures, that code that I live by, that is creative, confident, and compassionate. These are the three attitudinal assets one must possess in order to survive. Now, how? Let us quickly look at one important aspect of that is a fundamental question that all of should ask ourselves. I'm not, because during my other FDPs and MDPs, I get to interact with them in person. So I have an open session with them before I start my talk. That these are the fundamental questions which constantly we need to look and answer for. Like, who am I? What are my objectives? Now, what I'm doing to achieve them? Now, these are some of the fundamental questions. And the most important part, am I happy? Now, you can ask, these are some peculiar questions, or these are some of the questions which usually asked by religious leaders. So being a management student, why I'm asking this kind of questions to us? But this is the question which we need to introspect and look from deep within, that are we happy what we are doing? Because happiness stems out of the actions that we take, and those actions are governed or influenced by the attitude that we possess. So that has got a very strong connection. Now, fundamentally, if we ask, who am I? So is it you who is speaking, or your ego is speaking? So these are, these questions, one question itself needs a very thought-provoking, ideal discussion to take things forward from here. So, these are fundamental questions. I leave it with you, those who are attending this, and the teachers. So they may go home and introspect and try to find answers of it. And I hope during the end of this talk, I'll get to arrive at those answers. So quickly, let us look at that, what governs our thought process. So I, being from coming from the science stream, is a very intuitive and interesting aspect. Like we usually we talk that, I thought about it. Why don't you think about it? Those are the questions that we ask to other people. But what are the basic mechanism with which we come to a decision making? How do we think? So now if we look at, this is basically the flow of chemicals that are, traveling in our brains, those we call as neurotransmitters, like acetylcholine, gamma butyric acid or GABA, then epinephrine, norepinephrine. So these are some of the chemicals I commonly doctors tell us. So they are the people, dopamine, serotonin. Now these are the things which is directly involved, and the flow or transition of those chemicals are directly involved on how we think, and that drives, that distinguishes between a creative and non-creative person, that distinguishes between an agile person and a sloppy guy, that talks about the moods and moments that we create. We say somebody is in a very bad mood, that does not make the person a bad person, or momentarily, because of some of the chemical imbalances that made this people feeling sad or happy. These are the states of our mind which is governed or are influenced by the chemicals that, gets emanated in our brains. So now we have to think within this boundary, within this scope, how could we understand what is the basic essence of attitude, and then we'll talk about the motivation part. So primarily, if we talk about the attitude, let us quickly take a small pause and let's concentrate on this youngster, this young boy. This story dates back 2019. Now, if you could read, he is wearing a T-shirt where it writes, "I will be your friend." Now, we all wear, the youngsters specifically wear T-shirts of different text messages carrying into it, Mera Bharat Mahan kind of text also we wear, and we also we talk about attitude and so many things. Now, what is so special about this T-shirt? Now, this is youngster story. I mean, this boy comes from USA. He's a 6-year-old kid, and now 7. I mean, it's a story of last year. So this boy wanted to go to the school after the break. Now, during that point in time, his mother said, who has apparel printing business, said, "Blake, I want you to tell me what T-shirt you want. I can design one for you." So this boy said his mom that, "I want a T-shirt like this." Now the question is, why? Now this is, if you go to the background of the story, it happened when Blake went to the school. He found that his friends were being bullied by others. So he was very empathetic to his friends and found that there were some students who didn't have any friends. So he wanted to be their friends. That's the attitude he has shown, empathy he has shown, the nature of friendship he has shown, because he cannot go and tell others, but the message is louder. So think about the thought process must have occurred in the young brain of this young boy, Blake, that has composed, and it took internet by storm. I'm talking about 2019. Last year, it was one of the most viral images. It was there on Facebook, Twitter, and those who must have some of seen it. So it caught my attention. Only one single point, that if a youngster, a 6-year-old who perhaps must not be able to spell attitude properly, he has exhibited that. So it is very much intrinsic part. So your attitude or our attitude, it what makes us as a human being, good human being, bad human being, whatever we want to project ourselves. Fine. Now with this, let us understand what we are trying to make an attitude. Basic definition. So there's some bit of a theory. I don't want you to remember or cram them, but understand it. It's actually a psychological construct. So, and more importantly, if you could see the second point, it is acquired state experiences. So as a youngster, as a 6-year-old, what attitude Blake has, that perhaps not going to stay when he becomes 22 year, 23 year, or 30 year, or 40 years of age. So what will essentially happen, it will transcendate, he will transcendate to different experiences, and that's how your attitude would be built. So therefore our experiences are the greatest teacher which helps us in making the attitude. Now, it is actually, again, a predisposed state of mind. Predisposed means it's prone. I mean, we always have a preconceived notion about any event or system or style or value, anything. In our family upbringing. So therefore, that also helps in making the attitude. So now we are, with the experiences that we see, the kind very common example I'll quote here that I give it to all my lectures. Now you will see that when the parents, see a young child at home, so they give him certain values, give her certain values. So when the child becomes, adolescent or maybe adult, so their value system gets altered, because by that time he or she has experienced other aspects. Now that time parents find it little difficult. Perhaps they feel that that the child attitude has changed. They have started answering back. But now you have to understand, I'm not saying which is good or which is bad. I'm not a judge here, but I'm only trying to tell from a scientist's point of view that with the experiences the child goes through during his lifetime, that makes attitude. So therefore, it is very, very important the kind of environment we are coming through that makes our attitude good or bad. Now, with that second one, that when we talk about the influences that we are getting from the environment, the immediate reaction to it, what is behavior all about? So sometimes we say that his attitude is bad, whereas the behavior must not be the just. So there are two distinguished and different things, attitude and behavior, where attitude is about your belief, what you think, but behavior is what you exhibit. Sometimes you may be you are a very God-fearing person, you go to temple sometimes, but there are sometimes when somebody, you are having all good thoughts in your mind, but when it comes to altercation, you show the behavior which very unlikely of you, unbecoming of a good God-fearing person. So that is what I'm talking about, that behavior is influenced by a number of factors beyond attitude. So therefore, do not ever mistake one person's behavior by the attitude. That is, they said, don't judge a book by its cover. Sometimes you are meeting a person on its bad day, so we try to find out, and we opine and we derive that person is bad. But it must just so happen that person was on a bad day, or you rubbed from the wrong sides. Fine. So therefore, it says that positive attitude manifests well-adjusted behavior. If your attitude is very positive, if you are very proactive, you are thinking, you have been influenced, so therefore you can control your behavior. Sometimes it is not possible. We'll just give you a very classic example. Now, when we talk about the behavioral part of attitude, I just want you to draw attention to very simple, very wonderful, the set of examples. We see advertisements, we see political campaigns. Now you will see that we exhibit herd mentality, because whatever belief system we have, even advertisement is singing music to my ears, so we tend to fall for it. That is not the attitude, it is the behavior which is coming in the forefront, and it is overpowering the attitude. So it is your immediate reaction. So suddenly if you see some very inviting kind of food is kept in front of you, though you know that you should not be eating them, it's just an analogy I'm trying to draw, but your immediate behavior falls for it. So therefore, the immediate environment under which you are surrounded, they also contribute to your decision making, and thereby you are exhibiting a behavior which is different from your attitude. And that is the reason these advertisements, the political campaigns, any persuasive media who actually makes us buy things, who makes us go for liking certain products, and that's entire integrated marketing communication is all about as a subject. How do I pursue my customers? Now, here I try to quote a very classic example. So there is one famous psychologist of Stanford University, Richard Lapierre. Now he traveled for 2 years with one Chinese couple, and he went around 251 hotels and restaurants in US just to test one thing. So I mean, this is a classic example. So during that time, there was resistance towards Chinese people in the US. So what he did, he went and asked those people, that couple, to seek services from the hotel. So except one, to all 250 hotels and restaurants extended their services. So what is it? This is the behavior they had shown to their customers. Absolutely fine. Now, when he came back, he sent a survey, and he found that only out of 251, 128 responded, and they said 92% of them, they do not want to extend their services to this Chinese people. So here the problem comes. So what their attitude towards Chinese couple was negative, but when it came to practice, they ended up offering them the services. So that was, I mean, it was a well published article. It was published in 1934, and it is called a seminal work. And people, everywhere this example is quoted, and they said how people differ in their attitude and their behavior. Now, there are three major things that we exhibit through our attitude. One is the cognitive part, which is the knowledge, the thought process. Affective is your emotions, your feelings, and the actions, your psychomotor functions. Now, they start developing at a very early age, and then they are influenced by people around us, your friends, your parents, your teachers, your colleagues in the department, or whatever, where we go. But then let's understand one thing, that if we get into, this is primarily for the teachers, the moment we try to correct our students too much, just drawing on a simple line, even same goes for the employees also. So the basic intelligence fabric gets distorted. So let's say one student in my class writes an article. So if I start disturbing him by upsetting the entire plan of his architecture of his article, so what will happen? Cynicism will sneak in. Cynicism means on negative thoughts. Nay, this is not good, that is bad. So what will happen in the process, that student will develop a fear psychosis and anxiety, and that will be ingrained in his or her attitude, where he will be afraid of committing mistakes. So as a teacher, our responsibility is to always encourage them, even if they're committing mistakes, but we have to check that mistakes aren't to be repeated, or we try to reduce the frequency of those mistakes. If we go for overcorrectional pattern, every time we try to guide them, every time we try to make them see through our eyes, so we will be creating a clone of ours, which may not be as good as me, because we are not God. And second time, we will be disturbing or damaging the natural construct of that particular student. So therefore, it is the responsibility, the attitude of the teachers also, to look into the perspective and let them grow as they are with limited correctional facility. Fine. Now let us understand the attitudinal consequences. That's very interesting one. There are basically 4 types of attitudes that are exhibited by people. So one is positive, one is negative. I mean, people having very negative attitude, which are they end up becoming the worst naysayers or the critics. And primarily they are the armchair critics who don't own a responsibility. Whereas the positive attitude people, they become the creators, they become the leaders, and they shoulder a lot of responsibility. So we have 2 in between. One is the ambivalent, and second is second. Now those, I mean, we have to find out, or rather I ask you, I request you to find out those people in the 4 quadrants in your own environment, and you know what to do with them. Because ambivalent people are those who are neutral. Neutral means they can be modified, they can be influenced by any negative person or any positive person. So they are some kind of they are very vulnerable people. So if you find the students usually highly, they do not have that kind of very strong attitude when they come to the class. So it is responsibility of the teachers to look at their personality and try to foster them towards developing a positive attitude. So till ambivalent, positive, negative, they are clear, because negative, they are 2% to be avoided. Positive are those you need to create a camaraderie with positive people. Ambivalent people are those the positive influencers will try to create some positive aspects, bringing out the positive aspects from them. But then the fourth one, the second attitude, are those people who are very negative in nature. They are very destructive. So either you try to convert them into the positive one, or you try to avoid them depending on your situation and your environment. So this is the basic positive part. So what all things a positive attitude will encourage: the productivity, the openness, creativity, ability to work in a diverse group situation, the enthusiasm, energy, you can do it, the confidence, the ability to channelize the stress, and the sense of purpose and direction. These are some of the basic attributes which you must have been observed in the people around you. So if you find those traits, you find the people are having a very positive attitude, and then you can create a group of those people having very positive attitude, because they would help you reduce your stress, and they would help you into developing a good network of people with positive attitude, and that lot of problems could be solved by those people. And then I have a very interesting question for you. I think I am supposed to ask you some question later on, but this question I couldn't avoid keeping it here. So you may make a note of it, and I think we can come out with your answers later on when we get to interact. The question is very interesting, because I asked this question in each of my class, that are learners, I mean, this is for the students actually, I mean, teachers can answer them, highly motivated because they are successful? So you will find that there are students who are getting constantly good marks in the exam, and that keeps them motivated, or they are successful because they are motivated. So it's like, which one comes first? It is the motivation brings success, or the success brings motivation? So I leave this question with you, and I'm looking for an answer right now. Maybe at the end of my discussion, we can take those answers. Is that all right, ma'am? We can take the questions later on.
Later on.
Okay, fine. We can take it later on. Fine. I gave the question to them. Then we can discuss it later on. Okay, thank you, ma'am. And then let's move the second part of the discussion, which we talked about, the motivation part. Now, motivation, any discussion on motivation cannot complete without referring to two important models: the Maslow's need hierarchy, all across psychology and all management and social sciences. We have discussed this length and breadth, but I'll try to be very brief on that. So this is the need hierarchy model, and where the motivation comes from. So motivation, according to Abraham Maslow, the motivation comes from the fact that we need to meet our requirements. So physiological, then you have your safety needs, which are the physical needs. Then you have the, love, belonging, the social needs, and self-actualization, which is the highest need about your self-esteem, which is recognition, reward. So these are some of the needs which people need to fulfill during their lifetime being in the society, and they essentially bring a lot of motivation into it. And the second one was very interesting one, the Herzberg two-factor theory. Now, why did this theory came? This theory came much later. I think somewhere around 80s. In 80s, this idea basically came, because Maslow's theory came up I think 50, 60. That was at that early time it came up. Now, what happened in Maslow's theory? The theoretical component was much, because no empirical evidence wasn't provided. So Herzberg says that, okay, fine, I accept that there are these needs, these basic needs to be fulfilled, but then what are the empirical evidences? So thereby he identified two categories of variables, which are called the motivators. That absence of them will cause for dissatisfaction, and presence of them will cause for satisfaction. So there are recognition, there are salary. Like for example, the salary is something, if we work, we want. So they, if in absence of them, will cause dissatisfaction, but presence will not cause satisfaction, because we have seen, okay, fine, we have accepted to it. So these are called the hygiene factors. So presence and absence of them. Like, you know, the responsibility. You are working in a senior profile. If I'm not getting a responsibility to discharge, that might cause, this is one of the hygiene factors. Absence of responsibility in role will cause dissatisfaction. So likewise, so basically motivation talks about two important aspects, that what drives you and what are the factors that contribute to your growth. Now, if we talk about motivation, so there we have two categories of motivation. One is internal, another is external. And the motivation, actually, it stimulates the desires and energy for the people to continually interested. So motivation is something which keep people constantly engaged in the activities, which constantly engaged people to be stay committed in a job. Now, if we are teachers, what is the motivation that we get? That perhaps we need to teach more, we need to improve ourselves, we are trying to increase, you know, the effectiveness of our teaching, we're trying to getting attention from the students and help them learn, grow more. So these are the some of the internal motivational factors that drive us, so that we can become a good teacher, better teacher, perhaps the best teacher in the days to come. So likewise, for every industry, a similar pattern is being followed. And then the motivation as a factor, it comes out, the conscious and unconscious factors. No, the reward associated with it. So if I am doing it, so that is one of the important factors, what reward I am getting. It doesn't always have to be a financial reward. It doesn't have to be, you know, some monetary or maybe a designation, but it could be intangible rewards also. Maybe if you are explaining something to a student and the student feels happy about it, that's an intangible reward, one gets it. But then those rewards should be understood in the form of a reward to keep you motivated. Because if you are not motivated, the things will not happen the way it should happen. Now, I'll give you very three pictures here. I hope those are small, and you could see that there is a lady is trying to do a activity. I hope many of you would not know. This is a classic case of Tripura. So this lady is trying to, you know, pick water from a natural well which is there on a hill. This is the picture of Tripura. Now think about it, day and day out, what this lady is trying to do is trying to fill water within this small bucket. Now, what is the motivation for her? If we don't do it, they don't get to drink water. Now, you could see there are similar examples, Rajasthan also, but this situation is particular in Tripura, which is a very highly rain-fed state. Highly, you know, people are getting enough rainfall, but even then there is a dearth of potable drinking water. So for her family, she has to do this exercise each day, risking her own life, because if she falls into it, there is no way out up, because it's a natural gorge and water fills the spot. So, and it has been not a man-made kind of a well, it's naturally created well given by nature. She has to pick water and very careful, and during rainy season it becomes slippery and chances are there accidents can happen any point in time. So now think about the internal motivation. Somebody would need to do it every day. So this is, I'm talking about that you must see, or one must know the kind of job they are doing and feel responsibility of that job. Now we talk about the intrinsic motivation, which comes from within. So now it is the, you know, what I'm doing, what drives me, that what are the tasks that I'm doing. So people have to understand motivation comes from the fact that people should fall in love with the job they are doing. If I'm a teacher, if I don't like teaching, if I don't like talking to my students, perhaps the motivation will never come. And it always doesn't have to be, you know, that, okay, I'm doing something good. Rather, it is what I am getting from the as a feedback and how I'm improving. That is the constant motivational force that drives people. And then you have there's so many examples are there in part of intrinsic motivation. No, I'm not reading it out. You can find the social status, the contract, order, power. No, that happens. I mean, not only the teaching profile, it can be seen all across in the industry also. The honor, the respect, teaching. I mean, as of now, I guess we are very respected people in the society because we are discharging our responsibility with full dignity and honor. So therefore, these are the intrinsic motivation. What I'm doing is worth respecting. So that is one of the biggest intrinsic motivation. Now, is there something which we call as extrinsic motivation? Yes, they are. So they are coming from the people, they are coming from the environment who are covering us, who are influencing our thought process. So now not everything is intrinsic. Now we need when we talk about we need to motivate. So what are the factors that we do? So extrinsic motivation talks about your financial reward, a promotion. But remember one thing, in my opinion, whatever I feel, nobody can influence you until and unless, nobody can motivate you until and unless you are motivated from within. So even if had it been so, then money or financial reward or promotion would have motivated each and everybody. But still we see people underperform. People are not happy from within. Remember the first slide when we talked about, am I happy? So the happiness is one of the biggest quotient to keep you motivated. Now, every day, every Monday rather, when we get up, so are we feeling motivated to go to the office? This is a fundamental question. We call it Monday blues. When I was in industry, we used to talk about one thing, Monday blues. Saturday, Sunday, we have had enough parties, so Monday is very difficult to get up and go to the office. But then we used to think that if we do not go, there are some activities perhaps we are missing. The students will be waiting for me in the class. So do they provide you enough motivation? And then if we talk about how do you motivate yourself, the one fundamental thing that comes to the fore, which I believe, that you set your goals as a motivational tool. It could be publishing a research paper, it could be organizing a conference, it could be completing a project, it could be applying for a consultancy work, it could be enrolling a student for your PhD as teachers. It could be helping the students to do some innovative work they want to do. So now when you set your goal as your motivational part, obviously nothing can beat you there. Then we need to, there are some times when we get into the odd situations, there are a lot of hostility in the organization sometimes happens, the office politics, the peer politics, those things keep us down. But now if we can know how do we reframe, and we can understand the situation, and we try to find out what best we could do out of it. If my chips are down, if I'm in a very odd situation, so there are certain situations, certain moods and momentums which I try to think. So how do we channelize those energies in bringing the best part out of me? Because I am not a very negative person, I am not a very bad person, I have been doing well, but it is only the situation that has pulled me down right now. So to get up on our own feet, pull up our socks and get going, what I need to do is to channelize my energies. I need to go to my peer group who are very extremely positive and who have been supporting me during my odd days, and I need to reframe. I need to see the world through a new lens, new perspective. And that's the reason, that's where we need to constantly motivate ourselves, whip ourselves. Okay, fine, my chips are down, things are not happening the way I want, because not every day will be a very good day for you. Not every day things will happen as per your choice. So there are odd days, there are bad days. So we need to motivate ourselves that always, if there is night, there will be morning. So if we have a very positive attitude, if we think good things are awaiting me, so we need to and work up continuously on that line and develop a state of mind which will not destabilize even after harsh challenges are there. Now, I have three suggestions, or rather, which I believe actually, because I have taken my department, because where I am teaching right now. So I have given a code to my students, because first code that I have given, that you have to shun non-challenge. So non-challenge means it's an ideal state when you do nothing. So it's a form of habituation. So habituation means accepting things the way they are. Habituation means not trying to find a solution to your problem and wait for somebody else to rescue you. So it doesn't happen. So now you have to form an attitude where you try to find a solution of your own problems, where you need to think beyond the normal scope of things, when you need to look closer, study the problem more minutely than others are doing. So I have given this code to my students that you have to shun non-challenge and you have to remain creative. Fine. Second is celebrate what you have and keep building on it. So sometimes we compare with others. So if I am weak in certain subject, if I'm weak in certain domain knowledge, why my peers are doing good, so I get into a shell, into a cocoon, that okay, perhaps I am not that good. I am not, able to deliver the goods that are required. I am not a good student because my peers with whom I'm sharing the classroom, with whom I'm sharing my bench, so they are far better than me. So now you do not have to think. So celebrate whatever you have. Everybody is different. Everybody is posed with some talent. So once you need to create a space for you, and whatever good things you have, you need to keep building on it. So there were some of my scholars are there. I could see this. Not everybody is very good in quantitative research, but some are very good in their own domain area. So I said, okay, fine, you build on it. You have to write a case study. You don't need to write all the time quantitative, very highly statistical influenced research papers. Only one article would do wherever you are trying to give your own thought process. You be original. So celebrate whatever you have, whatever your potentials are. And on that, you start building on continuously. Because we need to shun the habituation part. Second, we need to celebrate whatever things happen. Even the minor targets that we achieve, we must celebrate. Because what will happen at home also, we have seen that even a student of our children have scored, I'll not say very good, moderate marks. We come home, we said, okay, you have got this much, but your friend has got that much. So when we start comparing, so obviously what happens, we forget to celebrate. This student has brought some. If we encourage, if we celebrate, he may get higher marks next time. So that happens, that kind of cycle always keeps rolling all across this place, all across the academic ecosystem. So therefore, we need to build on whatever we have so that the mistakes that we had committed, as I said earlier, we should not be repeating, and we keep continuously develop ourselves into it. Be it new skill acquisition, be it organizing new conferences, seminars, topics, projects. And the third is the very most important part, have a heart for the environment. Now this environment, I'm not talking about the the biological environment. It is rather, your environment means everybody around you. So therefore it could be your friends, it could be your peers, it could be your office, it could be the office building, the natural environment, the political environment, legal environment. You should have a heart for the environment. So that is, you need to develop a compassionate part. So three important things, three codes that we live by. I want you to take home three things today: that you should be creative, should become confident, and compassionate. So these three will identify your attitude. And if you are compassionate, if you are confident, if you are creative, it will give you enough motivation each day, and each day would be a new day for you. So with this, I thank you all for your patient listening. So is there any question, or rather we can take up the questions which we had given. So anybody wants to ask any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you, sir. Here are questions, I think. Ma'am is going to just tell you.
Sir, there is a question from participant Giriraj Verma. How can we handle the person who always demobilize the person who are always ready to assign work?
Ma'am, could you repeat the question? I missed that.
How can we handle the person who always demoralize the person who are always ready to assign work?
How can we handle the person who misses, who doesn't want to work?
Who always demoralize.
Okay. Who died? See, that's what I said. I mean, first of all, you need to create there are two ways to deal with it. First, when the counseling is very important here, because why this work is important, because many of the times it happens that I have also seen in my experience that sometimes we assign tasks to people without citing the background of it. Because let us understand one thing, that we in the academic fraternity, in the knowledge economy, nobody is going to take things. It's not a defense, it's not an armed service or a police force that instructions are to be followed without asking questions. So there could be people who may be having queries about the sanctity of the order that has been given, the task has been given. So if those persons are explained, so many times it happens after a discussion or heart-to-heart discussion takes place between the person who has been assigned and the person who is assigning, many of the times observe that problems are solved. Number one. If it doesn't happen, so then you need to identify the person, what his background is all about. So therefore, you need to create a team of people who are very positive thinkers. So what happens, like in physics, we have induction effect. So induction effect, what happens if we are having in my group, I am having 5 people who are very positive. So staying with them, the sixth one also tries to contribute, and they also wants recognition, because this motivation, as I said, everybody needs recognition, everybody needs award. So you, as a leader, one has to connect the goal with the motivational part, to connect it with the reward. If you do it, perhaps the reward is awaiting you. It could be tangible, it could be intangible. Maybe a pat on the back sometimes plays a very interesting role. Not everybody is motivated by money, but with good words, a little pat on the back, boss, you have done very well. So things happen. Things naturally, you can get the kind of responses. I hope if you practice this, the result would be done, because that's what I'm doing in my own department.
Okay, thank you, sir. I request to participants. Sir, there is another question.
Yeah.
How can I motivate myself when I am in stress?
Yeah, that's what I said. There are not every day is going to be the same one. Not everything is going to happen as per your own choices. So sometimes you have to let it go, be with the flow. Usually when people are more objective driven, they face such kind of situation. So stress is a sense of dissatisfaction arising out of non-conformance. I mean, sorry, I'm reading out a long theory, but it is actually a non-conformance. Is a you anticipated things to happen in certain way, it did not happen. You have to understand one thing: we are not living in the society in isolation. There are people in and around us who are also living with us. We are coexisting. Sometimes those forces influence the decision more than happen. So therefore, you need to look at yourself, that whatever you have done in the past, you get into stress because of one single thing did not happen, because of couple of things did not happen. Fine. So you wanted to do certain things, it did not happen. So this absolutely, you can just pull up your socks and take the next activity. Let's say I give you one simple example of mine. In this lockdown, I was working with my team for research papers. So within these 3 months, 4 journals rejected my submission. Everybody talks about acceptance, I'm talking about rejections. So 4 journals rejected. So what am I supposed to do? Lie down on a couch and start crying, weeping is rejected? No, I sent to the 5th journal. So it's like, let it go. I'm fine. I mean, people in my office, if somebody tries to abuse me, bully me, I'll ignore them, because ultimately what happens, you have to do things, you have to draw a longer line with your activity. And if you are capable, if you are comfortable with your own activity, these all are passing clouds. Yeah, ma'am.
Sir, there is one more question. She's going to.
Okay, okay, fine.
Sir,
Yeah.
how do we differentiable between attitude and arrogance?
Yeah. So again, arrogance is ego. Attitude is one's, by scientific measure I'm talking about, because when we see the arrogance is coming out, it is the behavior. I mean, it's a very, ego is a part of the behavior, it's not the attitude. Attitude is what builds with the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor movement. Psychomotor movement leads to the ego part or the arrogance part. So you don't need to, become victim of somebody's arrogance. You just have to ignore them. It's just a simple thing, because sometimes it may so happen once good work, good culture becomes threat to others. You do not have to abuse anybody. If you are having an, you know, incompetent peer, incompetent leader, which is very much there in almost in every organization, people do have such kind of a human setup. So your strength, your strong potential becomes threat to others for no good reason, and they try to bully the people. That's the reason I showed this example. But you just have to ignore them and concentrate on your strength area, because if you engage with them, the further hatred will start. You don't have to engage. You do not fill your mind with those activities which trouble you. So therefore, you fill it with good thoughts. So it is always advisable to keep good people by your side, so that they can give you good advice and create a fraternity of people having positive attitude. That's all one needs to do, so that when you are in stress, you can fall back on them. When they are in stress, they can fall back on you. And you, each together of you, can create a good camaraderie. And that's how friendships are developed. So do I answer those questions?
Question? Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for attending all these queries of the participants. Thanks a lot, sir. These were the only questions, sir. Mukherjee, sir, thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
There
So I
are no
think,
more questions. Thanks a
okay,
lot,
fine.
sir.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks.
एक मिनट आवाज नहीं आ रही मैडम आवाज
मैडम ने अपने को अनम्यूट नहीं किया।
आवाज दिखाई दे रही है बोले मैडम बोले हाँ फिर से
A positive attitude brings strength, energy, motivation, and initiative. You explained with very interesting examples. Thank you for such talk, sir. Thanks again. Next को बुला लो. Now, moving ahead, let's invite Ms. Chitrakshi, image consultant and soft skills trainer. She is associated with many educational institutions and corporate. Her experience and association with people from various domains helps her to effectively manage people and their behavior. She has taken various kinds of training, especially communication, pupil, and behavioral. Her expertise in soft skills training largely comes from interacting, facilitating, and training students from across the country. Ms. Chitrakshi manages various functional areas of a training, including content development, conducting case studies, evaluating training, and mentoring training. She has worked not just with corporate but CEOs and academicians in one-on-one trainings. Her core competency includes a wide range of programs which are based on conflict management, presentation skills, interview skills, etc. Her training clients include UN Development Program, NIIT Technologies, G Entertainment Enterprises Limited, etc. Ms. Chitrakshi, please proceed with your presentation on conflict resolution.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It is such an honor to be here and participate in the faculty development program. Before I start, 166 crore 20,000 men have died because of a conflict between two brothers for one throne, for one land, for one place. This conflict is read by every Indian through generations. This conflict is our epic, the Mahabharata. Starting with this, I would like to tell you and also further present how important it is to manage conflicts. Conflicts are necessary, however, it is best controlled as soon as possible and managed in favor of what we want. So my topic for today is not just conflict management, it is from conflict to collaboration. Because in order to manage any conflict, I will further explain you later the different ways in which conflicts can be managed, but the best way to manage a conflict is to collaborate. Now, what is conflict? These are the various definitions of conflict that we hear every day. A state of open, often prolonged fighting, a battle, a war, a disharmony, incompatibility, disagreements, opposition of characters, differences in opinions, differences in everything that we believe and feel. And it happens because we all come from various backgrounds with various experiences. Now, to understand conflict better, I would want all of you to keep a pen and paper in front of you and write down one conflict that you can think of which is currently bothering you. I will address all the questions in the end. However, if there is a doubt, there is an option of raising your hand. If you know, please, some of you, could you raise your hands or show me some reaction so that I know that you know what to do when you're a little lost. So go to the participants tab in the Zoom chat, the Zoom window, and raise your hands, or probably just send me a reaction so that I know that you're listening. Can I have some reactions, everybody? No? No reactions here?
Hello.
Hello? Yes? Okay. So if you see the Zoom tab, in your Zoom window, there is a tab where there is a reaction. So in case there is something that you miss out on, or there is something that you want to participate in, or you have a query while I'm talking, you can just raise your hand, or if you understand what I'm saying, you could use the reaction. So reactions are a thumbs up and a clap. So you would know what to do. And that would also encourage me in being able to connect with you better. Okay. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes by the watch. Just write down or think about one conflict which is bothering you at the moment. Something, it could be primarily professional, because we're all professionals and we all come from a background where we have to have conflicts. It could be with our team members, with our students, with our teachers, with our colleagues, with our seniors, a senior from a different department, anything. But there is a conflict in your mind which might be bothering you. You will understand this better. You will understand the idea of conflict management much better if you already have a conflict in mind, so that you know and you can start working your mind towards thinking of a resolution. And this is how you will also, every time I touch base upon something, you would know where it's coming from and how it's coming from there. So I'm giving you 1 more minute. I'm hoping all of you are ready with at least one conflict. Whenever there is a conflict, a difference in opinion, and a disagreement, the first level of conflict happens to be irritation. So between two people, whenever there is a difference of opinion and your opinion is not respected or it is disregarded, the first thing that comes into your mind would be, why does this happen to me? Why are they doing this to me? Why can people not listen to me for once? Or why does there have to be a difference of opinion all the time? When you have this irritation, you tend to tell yourself that all is well, or everything's fine, things are going to be okay, and we'll manage it. It's just a small disagreement, and disagreements तो होते ही रहते हैं, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, चलो कोई बात नहीं, एक ही पहली बार है, जाने दो, and we let it be. We do not address the issue. So then our irritation turns into annoyance. When another disagreement happens with the same person, we start getting annoyed. And we want to avoid that person as much as possible. So in ways of ignoring that person or disregarding their opinions when it is important or when they might be right, then it becomes anger. So if this process continuously happens with the same person and we do not address the issue, we end up getting very angry with that person. So every time we hear their name, we make that face and say, oh, don't talk about him. वो हमेशा ऐसे ही करता है यार. He doesn't listen to me. Don't you realize, is that a good leader or is that a good person? What a bad person he is. I don't care what he says. I will ignore him as much as possible. I don't want anything to do with him. Or I will not listen to what he's saying. Even if he's right, he's wrong, I don't care. I'm not listening to him. And at times this becomes violence. Now, violence might not necessarily mean physical violence where you're beating each other up. That happens in case of a younger generation who's more open about it, or people in non-professional workspaces, it might turn to violence. However, in case of workplace, it usually ends up in mental violence, emotional violence, and eventually one way or the other of harming either yourself or harming the other person. Whatever the sort of violence, it is not healthy and it is going to affect the way people see you or the way you work in that team or group or workplace. Your workplace stress and time will be affected and it will not make you happy. And when you are unhappy, you will not be able to give your best. Your performance and your productivity will be reduced, and all your major time will go on thinking or wondering or trying to manage that conflict. So it is very important to address any conflict that you have. Team conflicts, which are basically conflicts of organization. Now, there are various sorts of conflicts, like international conflicts that we've all seen, India, China, India, Nepal lately. There are conflicts which are inter-department, so between the finance and the sales department, or the finance and the administrative department. There are domestic conflicts between Say we had the Jat agitation where Delhi stopped the water flowing into Haryana and so on. So these are the kind of things that happen. So there are various sort of conflicts, but the conflict that we are going to address today are conflicts between organizations and in workplace. What are the causes? Different people, different personalities, same organization, different experiences, different exposures, and hierarchy, resource, role, misconduct, unacceptable behavior, discipline issue, performance issue, productivity issue, result orientation. Everything can be different, and hence the difference. Now, most often than not, we try to avoid conflicts because we see them as something which is very negative. Most of us believe that conflicts ka matlab hai jhagda and jhagde ka matlab hai negative. And agar workplace may we get into a fight, that is definitely negative. It is going to reflect very badly upon us. So what do? We hide, we avoid. We try to avoid first the issue, then we avoid the person, and eventually it becomes bigger than all of us together and blown out of proportion. So we have to first break the myth that conflicts are negative. No, conflicts can be constructive or destructive. A constructive conflict is one where the results end up in clarification. They help you release your emotions, stress, and the way you feel with that person, and it helps you work better together. A destructive conflict will always have opposite energies, polarizing groups. So we start forming groups, we gang up against each other, we deepen our differences, and then it is again gone from one small conflict to such a major organizational conflict. How can you manage conflict? This is where I would be telling you 4 stages of managing conflict. However, there are various other ways, and that I'll be covering later. The first is identification of the problem. Now, do you have a problem with the person? Do you have a problem with his ideas? Do you have a problem with his popularity? Do you have a problem in his communication? Is there a problem in the other person's views? Is it good or in the interest of people, or is it bad and not in the interest of people? What exactly is the problem? Is the person the problem, or is his view a problem, his difference of opinion a problem? First, identify that. Most people end up disliking people based on their image. Now, as an image consultant, I'm backing my theory up tenfold, because you have to understand that a communication is holistic when it is visual, verbal, both approved. So when I look at you, or when you look at me, if I was sitting here in a t-shirt and shorts and sitting like this and saying, conflict management to hota rehta hai, you would have probably disagreed with me the second I opened my mouth, because you were not okay with my attire. You would have not accepted me. So the problem might not have been what I'm saying. The problem would be how I look and then the things that I'm delivering. So if I were not well educated, or if I didn't know this, if I wasn't experienced enough, you would negate every word that I said. So first, identify the problem. Is the way he looks or she looks a problem, or is the way they talk, or is are the words that they use a problem? So understand this difference first. Identify the problem. Once you've identified the problem, look at it from a third bird eye view, which is also a third view of the situation. Is it really very big? Is it so big that it cannot be resolved? Is the argument or response so huge that it cannot be held or it cannot be changed? What exactly is the problem, and how can I sort this problem out? How can I resolve this problem? So arguments and responses, which will make you understand things a little better than before. You have to understand what all things are there. Just give me a second, excuse me. Sorry, there was some internet glitch. Yes. Once you've developed those arguments in your head, process the responses or the way this can be handled, then you develop and evaluate options. So this person is not interested in talking to me, or this person does not understand how things are being done, or this person has instant disagreements with me. However, there is something about another person in my team who he likes very much. That person may or may not have opinions, or that person may know how to talk better with him, or there is something about the other person that gets him through that the person that you're in a conflict with. So now evaluate all the options in which you can get in touch with that person or communicate better in order to work together and understand how this problem can be solved in better ways. And last, find resolutions and agreement. And whenever we find a resolution or an agreement to any conflict, we have to keep in mind that the solution of this issue is bigger than the person sitting in front of you that you have a problem with, and the person sitting in front of him, that is you. So a problem in a workplace has, the work has to keep going on. Because of one issue, there is a lot of disruption of work, which is primarily happening because you and that person are in a disagreement. It's not because you both cannot find a solution. The problem is that you're both not willing to listen to each other. The second you understand and accept the fact that the problem is, or the problem in hand, or the solution of the problem in hand is bigger than the two people involved here, it involves a workplace. And if two people are in conflict, constant conflict, it will affect the entire mood and energy of the workplace. And eventually it will result in your absenteeism, not being that productive, your ideas being suppressed, or not being able to express yourself well, and so on. So understand in the importance of conflict management. Now, the biggest and most positive thing about a conflict is there is a conflict because there is interdependence. You see these stones here. I really like this picture, and I make sure that I put it in every part of a conflict management. Now, these are stones which are of different shapes, sizes, and in fact, for that matter, even color. They are coming together to form this wonderful arc. If I remove even one stone from here, the entire archway will fall down. What can I do in order to place them better? Or if there is something about them which is not okay, I need to solve that. So interdependence, conflict arises because there is interdependence. You are at a workplace because of the work that you've done, your experience prior to where you are right now, and because you have the ability and competency to be at the position that you're at. So you're there, and you are as important as the person next to you, because don't negate the fact that they have also earned their way there, no matter how they've earned. Some people get their places because they might lack in certain abilities, but their communication is very good. And in any workplace, we need every different sort of person to get together. Some people have very good ideas, but their communication not be very good. The other person has very good communication, but their ideas are not good. One possesses very good leadership qualities. The other possesses very good networking qualities. So all these people get together, and when they come together to become a part of a team or a workplace, there is a little interdependence. If not major interdependence, there is interdependence. Now, a finance team will not be able to work if the sales team gets them no money. A professor will not be able to contribute as much if they are in conflict with their HODs constantly. The HOD will have a different way to work. The professor will have a different way. Ultimately, the result is to provide the best education and experience to the students. So because of these two people and their conflicts, the student will be affected. What do you do in such a situation? In one way or the other, you have to depend on each other. You have to motivate each other, and you have to stay motivated yourself. Now, there are 5 strategies that we use in conflict resolution. One is avoiding. Oh, I can't talk to this person. Let me not talk to this person at all. So every time that person walks close to me, I walk away. Every time there is an issue, I just put it under the wraps or think it does not exist. And in my mind, I'm sorted. But forget it. I don't care about the issue. I don't care about the person, and I'm not going anywhere with this. This is the worst strategy possible because it is a lose-lose for both of you. So you're not okay with this resolution and the person in front of you is not okay with the resolution either. Avoiding is never the solution to any problem because it does not solve the problem, it just delays or procrastinates the arrival of that problem, which could come in stronger than before. The other method is accommodating. So you're the one who you don't want to have a problem with the supervisor, senior, colleague, student. So what do? You just accept whatever they say. They give you a resolution which is not okay with you, but then there is a conflict. You want a resolution, but you don't want to fight. What do? ठीक है, जो भी है करने दो, जो वो चाहते हैं करने दो. No matter if they're right or wrong, no matter what your opinion is, let them do it. So you're constantly at a loss. They are winning and you're losing because you want to resolve a conflict. You're resolving the conflict, but you're also at the same time now you're not in an interpersonal conflict, you're in an intrapersonal conflict. Now you're in a constant conflict with your own self. Maine kar to liya, but I'm not happy with it. I've done this, I've resolved this issue, and now we have a solution, but I'm not happy with the solution. Why did I accept the solution? You'll constantly think about it. One day you'll be fine. The second day you'll be fine. Third time you'll be okay. Fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th, 100th, you're going to work together in that workplace. You're going to be there together. So every time if you end up accommodating or smoothing things out, it'll result in an intrapersonal or a conflict with your own self, which is equally bad, in fact, much worse at times. Now you'll force or compete. You are a leader, you have the upper hand, you are good at your work, and you have a very strong position. Competing is seen more often, and winning in case of competing is seen more often when you are the stronger person. So you're constantly competing as the boss, as the leader, or as the stronger colleague. You're constantly competing and proving to be better. So you have a problem with your colleague because you both have one boss and the two of you are in a team. Sir, can I get you some snacks? Sir, can I do this? Let me complete this work before she does or he does. Let me do this. Da, 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 da. And you're constantly competing because you have the time or energy and the other person might not have the same. So in this competition, you're winning, but at the same time, the other person is losing constantly. It is solving the conflict for you, but eventually the results will not be good. It will not be fruitful because in a team of 3 people, you've already lost 1 member. So if a conflict arises where that other person gets a chance to go against you, he will take that opportunity instantly and you will lose, if not now, then later. You're breaking the bond or the team spirit, or you're dividing your own team. Another method is compromise. Now, compromise means adjustment, and it may or may not mean the same as accommodating. Now, this is different because in this case, you're both giving up on something. So I have to leave office at say 4 because I have children, and this is a female colleague and a male colleague says I can stay longer, I'm going to stay till 6. So they both come to a consensus that together we leave at 5, we go to the boss together because we have to make this work. So let's go to the boss, and 5 o'clock both of us leave office, and that way is neither of us is pinpointed at. Very good. Well done, you've made that adjustment. However, the woman wanted to leave at 4 for a reason, and the man could leave at 6 for a reason. You've made that adjustment, you've worked your strategy out. However, you're not as happy with the resolution. Now, that's when my favorite part comes, which is collaboration. Collaboration, now you know why it was conflict to collaboration, because collaborations are always a win-win for you. Collaborations will always bring out whatever good you have, whatever problem solving abilities you have, and together you will come stronger as a team with better resolutions. Brainstorm, 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 get together, throw your thoughts into a bowl, think of the best possible solution, which is least damaging to any of you involved, and then come up with that solution. When everybody is happy, you will know that they're not just taking that solution seriously, but they're working together even better. Now they're all productive, they're very happy with the resolution, and they have decided to work together as a team and come out strongest as the team. This is easier said than done. I will not disagree. Every place in this world, forget workplaces, even at home, even during this COVID crisis, when women and men are both working from home, children are at home, they have to be there constantly, they don't have an option, nobody can go out, in-laws are in the house, if not in-laws, then cousins or somebody's in the house. So much work to do and very little space. In a house of 4 people and 2 bedrooms, if I want to do this training, and so does my brother and my cousin and my mother and my father, and we're all working and talking at the same time, do you think it will be fair on any of us? No. So what do? You collaborate and say, this is the time that I need to be at work. And this is the time we have to get help. We need other people to help. So together you brainstorm and say, okay, 4 to 5, I can do it. This is the time that I cannot give you my time. I'm very busy at this time. You can make me work from 3 to 4. Or from say 6 to 7 or 7 to 10, I'm available for you. The other one says, okay, I'm available at a different time. Together you end up, okay. Just a second, why are we doing that? Okay. So when we are when we are getting together and doing some work, we have to sit together and come to a common resolution or consensus. Now, how to deal with workplace conflicts, particularly. You're taken advantage of or you're taken for granted. Just because you don't have a loud voice, or you look very approachable, or you don't shout all the time, or you're not very assertive, somebody who's more dominating or assertive will take you for granted. Or sometimes when you are very sweet and you like to help others, you cannot say no that easily, you're taken advantage of. You have a perfectionist boss, so your hair has to be gelled properly. It cannot move from one place to another. A little spelling mistake and your entire file is thrown at you for getting the whole thing corrected. Or one error in calculation and your entire 10 hours of work is negated. Perfectionism. No compensation, rewards, or acknowledgement. No matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, nobody accepts, acknowledges, or rewards you for what you've done. So you're constantly demeaned or not given the due that you deserve. There are unrealistic expectations. You have not come together to find a solution to your trouble. You have not come together to sit down and understand what is expected of you from a boss and what you expect from your boss. If you cannot do this, or there is a team member, you have to work together. So you have to allocate expectations and goals. You have to set it down very clearly. You have to set down each other's spaces and workplace very, very, very carefully. There is, again, like I said, no clarity of goals and values. We are all working, but we are working in different directions. So I want to work for the students, you want to work for the management, another colleague wants to work for himself, and a third one only wants to work for money. 4 different people, 4 different goals, they're coming together and they still don't know how to do their work in one direction. We can get the management, the money, the students together and then form a cumulative strategy which will not just help us, it will not just benefit us, but it will benefit everybody there. It will have a common goal and everybody would want to achieve that goal. Values and goals are not synchronized. I've just done that. And there is miscommunication or no communication. So you are unable to speak to each other or discuss things with each other, and you end up in no communication. And most of the workplace conflicts usually happen either because of the goals, unsynchronized goals, or communication. So if you're not sure what your goals are, you can always go and ask, what am I supposed to do? What is expected of me? I want clarity in your expectations of the work that I am to do. So this is very, very important. You need to understand what you're doing and why are you doing it. If you're otherwise, what is the difference between somebody who is educated and somebody who's doing मजदूरी? उसे तो पता है, उसे सामान ढो के वहां पे रखना है. हमें तो यही नहीं पता है, because we're not sure what our goals are. We don't know, and because we are educated and we are all blessed to be so good at communication, we better use our communication in order to make a difference to our own lives. More than anybody else's lives, when you resolve a conflict that you're having, you are doing a favor to your own self. Now, this also comes under your communication. So you are assuming things, and most of the times we end up assuming things. I think he's talking to me because he doesn't like me. Why don't I go ask him, why are you talking to me like this? I'm sorry, but I do not like the way you're talking to me. Or I'm sorry, this is not acceptable to me. You cannot talk to me like this, or you cannot behave like this with me. I am also a senior resource or a junior resource for that matter. I have a say here, and I will not be taken for granted, or you cannot talk to me like that. How to reduce workplace conflicts. 1, develop good communication skills. If you think you're not good, hire a coach like me. Just saying, I am a communication and behavioral coach, so I can definitely come up and tell you communication is very, very important. Not just at workplace, but also at home. In your life, communication is very important. And when I say communication, it does not mean good language skills. It means how to make the other person in front of you understand. मुझे बहुत अच्छे से आता है, लेकिन अगर सामने वाले को समझ नहीं आ रहा है, my communication is incomplete. There is no point in my communication. If I am talking and you don't understand what I'm talking, why would you want to listen? And if you don't want to listen, how am I getting my point across? I'm not able to convince you that I'm talking sense. I'm not able to convince you that there is something in my communication which is going to help the both of us. Why would anybody want to listen? Clarification of expectations. What is expected of me? Why am I in this organization? What all am I to do in this organization? Why was I hired? What are my qualifications? Do I only have to teach or train the students, or do I also have to work on my own development? Not in terms of a faculty development program itself, but there are papers that I have to write. There are books that I want to write. I want to go up the ladder. Where is my growth and career curve? I also have to take care of home. So I have limited time. How do I give my time to everybody and yet be fruitful about the whole communication? Third, practicing interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills does not mean I am the superior one, and just because I have good communication, I'm going to say whatever I want to say. I am a senior resource person. I have 20 years of experience. So somebody who's just joined 5 years of experience, I negate whatever you're saying. No. Interpersonal skills means I'm right. Okay, I know that I'm okay, or I'm right, or that I'm good at what I'm doing. But the other person also has some value to add. The other person is also working with you, or even if they're working under you, they have some credibility. They are there for a reason. Let's give them their due. Let's give them at least some knowledge. Give them be a little courteous and let them at least talk. We have to give each other that space and that acknowledgement that yes, this person might help. If they're not even adding that, there is no reason for them to be there. And Fourth and most important, setting up behavioral consequence. If somebody talks to you like that, I will not accept it. You should know the norms and you should know how to take it forward if something bothers you. So if you're not happy with the way things are going, if you're not happy with the direction which things are going, you should know. One major thing that I've faced personally, as far as faculty and teachers are concerned, they do not know how they can take how official communication is done. Very, very important. And I have dealt with a lot of senior resource people, and I know that they're good with their work, they are excellent with their communication, but they don't know the importance of official communication. And I must tell you that WhatsApp, one, is not an official form of communication. A WhatsApp group is not an official form of communication, and email is definitely official. So if there is an issue tomorrow and you say, "Arey, maine aapko call to kiya tha," the other person will say, "No, I did not receive the call." Communication gone, cancelled, everything gone. So in case you're having constant conflicts with a person, make sure that if it's not working out at a personal level, make it as professional and as crisp as possible. So make sure you're putting everything on the email and you're getting good clarity about your expectations and their expectations. Tomorrow, you should not be in a position where you're going, somebody asks you what you have done, how have you contributed, and you say, मैंने कॉल भी किया था सर, मैंने मैसेज भी किया था, बट उन्होंने देखा नहीं या पढ़ा नहीं. That's your fault. Why did you not write an email? And then, why don't people read their emails? Very important. Once a day, at least, I would suggest, and this is something that we do at workplace, twice a day is the minimum that you must see your emails, and that is twice a day means during work hours. So if your work hours are from 10 to 6, you have to check your emails at least twice, because there can be an urgent communication. If somebody writes you an email at 12 in the night, you can always go back to them and tell them that this is not official and it's not acceptable to you. So make sure that you're clear about your communication. If you're not official about your communication, no matter what the hierarchy, tomorrow you are at the position of loss, not the other person. They will easily come and say, "Humne to kiya tha, humne to bola tha." Who's losing out? You. So in order to save your own self first, you must make sure that you have all your weapons in hand, and this one weapon is very important. Now, this is another one of my favorite topics when it comes to communication. And why did I want to add this definitely to conflict management? Because once a conflict arises, I've already told you, we're irritated, annoyed, angry, and violent. So before somebody gets to the violent stage, let's try sorting this out. And why have I put the picture of this man? Do you all know this man? Have we all seen 3 Idiots, seen Viru Sahasrabuddhi? The very well-educated man. However, his communication and the way he deals with people is definitely not accepted, and the way he causes communication rifts and conflicts with everybody, including students, not acceptable. So how do you communicate? Don't challenge the other person. Very important. The other person is angry, and the first thought that comes to our mind, because we all like to deal with our workplace communication the way we deal at home. That's not how it's supposed to be. Even as teachers, you're all making a difference, but the way you deal with students and the way you deal with your seniors or your colleagues is very different. Make sure that you maintain that difference. You have to separate your personal and professional life, and you have to draw a thin line, especially during this COVID time when you're working from home. How do you talk to the other person? Do not challenge them. Every time say, "Acha, ab to main dekhti hu. Kya kar loge aap? Kya kar loge? What are you going to do? How are you going to make a difference? Do you know who I am?" Sorted. Started even before you wanted to express yourself. You have angered that from annoyed conflict. You've already taken him to anger. Now, before the violence starts, please get out of the room. Keep yourself calm. Come back and speak softly, because if you're going to that angry person, means you need to get some work done. You have to get things done. So the ultimate goal is to get your work done. Do not spoil it just because you're angry at that moment. If you're angry at some point and you're talking to an angry person, first rule, get out of the room. Do not talk. Please do not talk when you're angry. It's very nice, you're motivated and you have a lot of things to say, but if you're so angry that you cannot control your anger or your words, no point in talking. Don't challenge the person. Apologize if and when required. Whenever you need, whenever you think that this might work, okay, that's my boss or that's my colleague, and maybe I don't know if you have remember, but there was the opening scene in Munna Bhai MBBS. If you've not watched it, please do go watch it. When there is a petty thief who comes and steals from Sunil Dutt's pocket, he takes out the wallet and Sunil Dutt catches him. And the second he catches him and says, "Chori kyun kar raha hai beta?" a lot of people come and gang up and start beating that man up. So Sunil Dutt stops that man and says, "ये वो लोग हैं जो अपने घर में झगड़ा करके आए हैं, माँ से गुस्सा है, बीवी से झगड़ा करके आए हैं, बॉस से फ्रस्ट्रेटेड है, इंडिया क्रिकेट मैच हार गया तो गुस्सा है, तो ये सारा गुस्सा तेरे पे निकलेगा, तो क्या मैं तेरे को इनके हवाले कर दूं, या मैं तू जो गलत काम कर रहा है उसके लिए you want to apologize." That's how I said, and that one thought has never left me, because it's very, very important. You have to understand that ultimately we are all humans and we have a lot of things happening around us. So in order to avoid major conflicts and get the work done in a nice, happy, positive way in collaboration, there are times when apologies don't matter. Now, I'm not saying throw your apologies at everybody who doesn't accept it or who then starts treating you badly. No. I mean, when you understand that, okay, he's facing a personal issue and he does not realize that he's taking that out on us, calm him down, find ways to calm that person down, and probably apology is one of the best ones. Talk to them softly, with diplomacy being the second one. They're angry, they need to accept what they're saying for a minute. I'm not saying accept it and work on it. Listen to what they're saying, understand what they're saying, summarize and paraphrase for them. So wonderful, you're saying I should stop going home, or I should stay at work till 7 o'clock. So very good thought. We'll have a lot to work upon. What brings that thought? Don't ask a why. Why will always put the other person in a challenging position. So you're challenging that person. So don't ask why do you want me to. What do you expect me to do when we stay in office till 7 o'clock? How would it make a difference? The work that you're making me do, would it be okay if I submit it the next morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, or when I go home and submit it later? Would that help? The important part is getting the work done, right? So what are the ways in which I can get that work done? Now, diplomacy doesn't mean that you go in front of that person and say, no, I accept what you're saying, and then you go behind his back and say, पता नहीं क्यों ऐसे बोलता रहता है, ये क्या काम होता है, ऐसे थोड़ी कोई करता है. Speak to that person, handle it, talk to that person nicely and happily. People, if they're sadistic, it's just very unfortunate, but that means that there is a lot of conflict, intrapersonal conflict that person is going through. Otherwise, if you're happy, why would you want to make the other people's lives miserable? If I'm happy, I would want to spread that happiness and help everybody. If I'm sad and miserable inside, I cannot see anybody happy. So understand that people are going through a lot of intrapersonal conflict themselves. So try addressing that issue too. The law of pressure cooker. You're just adding on a lot into a pressure cooker. Then you're giving it a lot of heat. तो आपने अच्छे से आग लगा दी pressure cooker में, फटेगा ना? So instead of doing that, the steam might blow in your face. In order to avoid that, you need to really work on how you can save that pressure cooker from bursting. When I started working in the kitchen, one thing that I learned, which is very recent, I must tell you, in order to cool down a pressure cooker and not break it. The first time I went into the kitchen, I was making kala chane, and I put water and kala chane mummy se phone pe pooch ke, and then I put it on the gas. The second, दो सीटियां, मम्मी ने कहा 2 सीटियां आएंगी बहुत है. 2 सीटियां आई, मैंने उसे खोला, I couldn't open it. I applied a lot of pressure and the cooker went and it bursted. So everything was out of the cooker. Thankfully, it did not hurt me. But this is something that I know from experience. If I handle a pressure cooker wrong, it will burst in my face. The steam will all come onto me. So what do? I take the pressure cooker, put it under water, open the cold water first. All the steam will settle down. And then if I open the cooker, it's sorted. So remember this law of the pressure cooker. This has always helped me. If there's something which is already bursting, do not apply more pressure to it. Force will not help. A little bit of the mind would help. Applying the mind would help. Okay, show empathy and appreciation. Very important. You have to understand, like I said, the other person's human too. If they are doing something which you are not okay with or you're not comfortable with, understand where that could be coming from. And then use an action. There was once a man and he had 3 children. He had 17 camels and he wanted to divide the 17 camels amongst his children. So he said 1/3 goes to one child, the 1/6 goes to the second child, and 1/9 goes to the third child. Now, anybody who's done maths knows that 17 can't be divided. What do you do now? So they all kept thinking and they were worried that the father's given them a very tough task and this cannot happen. This is very unfortunate that a task like this has been given. So they go around the village and say, we need help, we need help, we need help. A wise man comes to them and he says, oh, I have 1 camel. Let's add that 1 camel to yours and make it 18. So when I divide when I divide 18 by 2 into half, I give 9 camels to the first child. Then when I divided 1/3, the 18 camels, 1/3 of the 18 camels becomes 6, so I give it to the second son, and 1/9 of the 18 camels is 2, which I give to the third son. Now, if I do this calculation, 9 plus 6 plus 2 equals 17. That means I have 1 camel left and it goes to the wise man. So everybody is happy. In case of a conflict resolution, find that 18th camel for yourself. Sometimes we don't realize this 18th camel does not make a difference to us. However, this 18th camel might help solve various troubles of ours. So find the 18th camel. With that thought in your mind, find the 18th camel. I would like to end this session. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Okay, I can see a lot of chat box. Thank you so much.
We are just. Thanks a lot, Chitrakshi, for such a brilliant and mind-blowing presentation. It was really so much suggestive. It was really so much thought-provoking, and about so many new things we came to know, how conflict, in spite of being destructive, how we can resolve it. And not only at home, rather at the workplace also, all your suggestions, they were really mind-blowing. We are so much impressed by it. There is any question? So, Chitrakshi, there isn't any question. No question is there, actually.
Or is that because everybody understood everything so well?
Yeah, of course, you explained it so brilliantly. You convinced everyone. It was so beautiful. And one thing I would like to tell you that I have also learned that communication should be done only through mails. So that's also something, you know, I have just made up my mind from today onwards, I'll be doing that also. So it was something new for me to learn, because sometimes we believe in more in WhatsApp messages and we feel it convenient. But like you have said and you have suggested, it's so good and we shall be following it. Thanks so much for your brilliant suggestion. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chitrakshi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so now we are moving towards the end of the session. I would like to just feel obliged towards our guests. Today we had enlightening and captivating presentations by our 2 honorable guest speakers, Dr. Debarshi Mukherjee and Ms. Chitrakshi. The topic of Dr. Debarshi Mukherjee sir was attitude and motivation, and which has specific implications not only for the faculty members, rather for the people in general. The path of success, that is to take massive determined action, and the lack of attention to these things, they can lead to inefficiencies. It is sad. It is nice to be important, but it is important to be nice. So our behavior, our attitude, that's very important. And we should have intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. About that also Mukherjee sir told us, and we should set our goal. In order to pursue that, what we shall be doing? We shall be just motivating ourselves. So it was also a brilliant suggestion which was given by Mukherjee sir to all of us. We should channelize our energy, all important things. Such a brilliant presentation was given by Devarshi sir. I extend my hearty gratitude to you, sir. You have been so supportive. You have been so friendly. You have been so much affable and amiable throughout. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind support. And Chiktrashi's presentation on conflict and resolution, as we have seen just now, we have listened to that. That also we have seen that it was so much sparky. It was really enriching and illuminating. Whatever the cause of disagreements and disputes, we can solve them by adopting certain techniques, and then we can reach at a fruitful result. It is an absolute honor for me to express my profound gratitude on behalf of all the faculty members of the college to our guest speakers who accepted to be with us and be the main speakers at one call only and spare their valuable and precious time from their extremely hectic schedule. In between, there were certain hitches also, but at last, without their support only, we are able to carry out this program. Thank you so much, our guest speakers. We are so much obliged to you from the bottom of our hearts. I also express my gratitude to our respected Principal Dr. Owen Chobe sir, whose unflinching support has been an impetus for us throughout. I mention my deep sense of gratefulness to all the participants, faculty members, and the research scholars for actively participating and for giving response to us. I express my obligation towards the professors of the college whose moral support also has been unconditional throughout. I especially thank Dr. Rashmi Tiwari ma'am for her valuable suggestions and her support. Without her, this program would not have been possible. Last but not the least, I shall also express my sincere thanks to our technical team members, Ashwini Yadav and Prateek Gaur and Manoj Yadav, who have been extensively supporting us throughout. And also everyone who are directly or indirectly, they have supported us in this program. And because of that only, we have been able to carry it out and to bring it at this point of success. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot once again. There is one instruction for all the participants. The feedback forms, they will be sent to you on WhatsApp groups. So you please make an access and fill the feedback forms daily. See you tomorrow at the same time. With the permission of Principal Sir, we stop our program here only. See you tomorrow at the same time.